Good day, everyone. You are welcome to another exciting facilitation time on ED 256 Physics Method. I am Dr. Amusa Oluwadamilari. In our previous classes, we talked about the meaning of science, the nature of science. In today's class, we are going to go on a journey of history of science and science education in Nigeria. Science, the Roman contribution, I'm talking about the Greek, yes, the Greek, the time of the Greek philosophers, and the way it journeyed down. What was the role of the colonial masters in the development of science education in Nigeria? What was the role of the missionaries? So these are some of the basic things we are going to examine in our discussion today. I want you to get your pen, your material as usual, and be part of this class. So let's move on to our learning platform. Meet me there. You are welcome to the learning platform, and of course, the topic is history of science and the development of science education in Nigeria. Looking at our learning a objective, intended learning outcome, at the end of this class, you should be able to present a brief narration on the origin of science. Give a narration on the role of Christian missionaries in the development of science education. Also, you should be able to present the roles of the colonial masters in the development of science education, and what was the contribution of the government, I mean the indigenous government, in the development of science education in Nigeria. These are some of those things you should be able to do at the end of this class. Now, talking about history of science and the early scientists, you know, science has been considered to be as old as as man. The early man, observed natural phenomenon and speculated on its causes so as to find explanation, to the events that happen around them. From the early men to the Greek times to the Roman, then the British and the Arab times, man has always wanted to understand the wonders of nature. They ask questions like what is sun, moon, what is the role of star, the rocks around them need to be understood, the air, and other living things and non-living things around them, instigated a lot of questions. And the Greek philosophers were the first to introduce the tradition of speculation, which later formed the basis of today's scientific theories. Thales had theorized about the universe and its compositions without laboratories or other observatories. So these are some of the contributions, some of the effort made in the past. On the side of Plato, Plato was a student of Socrates. Socrates, he introduced logic in an attempt to explain and understand nature. So the concept of logic could be traced to the time of what? Of Plato. Another philosopher that is worthy of mention in tracing the history of science is Democritus. Democritus was the first to develop, the atomic theory, and was also the first to use the word atom, and the word atom was derived from atomos, meaning indivisible. So Aristotle was also, succeeded Plato, but deviated from his view of the universe. He had a different view of the universe. For him, the four elements that constitute the universe were, earth, fire, water, and air. So those are the some of the submissions made by Plato. So I know by Aristotle, I mean, because Aristotle succeeded Plato. No, Greek science majorly was regarded as conceptual science. It was not based on sound data. There were no apparatus, no equipment to put up empirical study. So they were mainly conceptual science because there was no sound data, and was mainly preserved or further enlarged you know between years 600 and 1600 AD by the civilization of the Roman, Asian, and the Europeans. So what is practiced today as modern science emerged as a result of the demise of the Greek science in the 15th, 16th, and 17th century. So, we have talked about Aristotle. If you look at this picture, you see Aristotle. Socrates was a father. Plato was the student of Socrates, and Aristotle was the student of Plato. So as we can see, Aristotle argued that earth, fire, water, and air are the fundamental substances. So we have also argued that Greek science was majorly conceptual and not empirical. So the 20th and the 21st century science is based on discovery, observation, and now looking at the role of missionaries in development of science education in Nigeria, uh, it started like evangelism. The evangelism mission of the church led to the creation of school uh, in the country. The first primary school, which was established by the Methodists in 1843, and the first secondary school was established by the Christian Missionary Society in 1859. Much was not done. They were basically, engaging in grammar and classical education, the training of teachers and pastors so as to support their missionary activities. They introduced vocational and agricultural education, so there was agricultural school. And in an attempt to teach science, attempts was made to teach botany, nature study, natural philosophy, and physiology. So those were the major subjects that was introduced by the Christian missionaries. They could not go far due to huge costs, that is required in the establishment of science program for science education. So there was no trained teachers for science, and they are more interested in training clerks and pastors. So some of the challenges they faced was that there were no science textbooks, no uniform, no curriculum, and they had major barrier in the area of communication. They could not communicate in the local language, and so they could not. So in the picture here, you can see the first primary school, and this depicts the first secondary school, the CMS, established by the Christian Missionary School. Those schools are still there till today, and that has been the roles of missionary in development of science education. Now let's have this activity. Briefly describe the role of Christian missionaries to the development of science education in Nigeria. So use that as a practice, and let's continue. Now let's talk about the role of colonial government in the development of science education. Of course, the colonial government existed side by side with the Christian missionary. The trade mission of the colonialists determined the initial aim of education in Nigeria. They were not interested in developing any science curriculum. Okay, so they're interested in educating the clerks, in developing the clerks and interpreters. They were more interested in developing servants and cooks that will work with them in their various homes. So, and the colonial masters were afraid of the impact that science will have on the people, on the on Nigerians and the blacks in Africa as a whole. They don't want science to liberate us, and they have the belief that the blacks could not get the brain to learn science, that they are inferior in learning science, and their intelligence cannot do science. So That was the misconception they had about the blacks. So science teachings was treated with levity, and they were not interested in developing uh, the science program in Africa. So of course there was this education ordinance of 1908, which put pressure on the British government to educate the blacks and the Africans in general. You know, we can always talk about the effort made after that, and let's some of their contribution. Now they established King's College in 1909. So King's College, you can see, so it was established in the effort, and that was the after the ordinance and the pressure on them to develop education in Africa. So the colonial government, apart from being interested in producing manpower to support their mission, were latently afraid of the positive impact of science on the people. The government did not show any interest in encouraging the vital effort of missionaries in laying the foundation for modern science education. You know, their support came by way of meager grants to mission schools, as stipulated by the Education Ordinance of 1908. That was where the colonial master came in. Schools were at liberty to decide how to use the grant, and some did use it to acquire science equipment for laboratory instruction. Government forced direct involvement, colonial government now, direct involvement came in 1909 when it established what is now called King's College. King's College. So in Lagos to serve as a later Queen's College. After King's College was established in 1909, Queen's College came up in 1927. In 1929, two government colleges were opened at Ibadan and Umuahia to serve the western and eastern region. They also had provision for teaching of science. The African Education Commission, sponsored by First Stroke of the United States of America, came in, and it compelled them to do the needful. This led to the establishment of Yaba College in 1934, and University of Ibadan also came in 1948. And the establishment of WAEC, West African Examination Council, and the Science Teachers Association of Nigeria, things became turned around, and it was recorded as a landmark achievement. The establishment of Federal School of Science, Lagos in 1958, also contributed to the development of science from the colonial masters. Another important factor that accelerated the science education development effort in 1950 was the establishment of West African Examination Council by an ordinance. From this point, changes were introduced in the syllabus. British syllabus, which was foreign, in content, was made to reflect indigenization of content and scope of science teaching in Nigerian schools. Popularization of science teaching received a boost in 1957 as the Science Teacher Association of Nigeria was inaugurated. So these are some of the roles of after independence. Excuse me. After independence in 1960, foreign technical aids led to the establishment of higher institutions and universities. As you can see, ABU, Ahmadu Bello University, started in Zaria in 1962 with University of Ife, while University of Nigeria and Nsukka had started 2 years earlier in 1960. So these are some of the efforts by the indigenous government. Teachers College produced teachers who took over the teaching of science in secondary schools from these areas. So these are some of the historical background that is that has been narrated towards development of science education in. Now let's have the second activity. What are the 5 major contributions of the colonial masters towards the development of science education in Nigeria? It is a practice question. Ensure you attempt it and go over there. To end this class, let's have a quick wrap up. We have discussed the origin of science from the early men through to the Greek philosophers. The contribution of the Romans and the Arabs, we also examined. The role of the Christian missionaries, colonial masters, and indigenous government towards development of science education in Nigeria was also examined. We have also learnt that King's College was established in 1909. The basic sciences, physics, chemistry, biology, and math, were taught using British syllabus and curriculum. This content was foreign, but at the establishment of WAEC and the content became indigenized. And Yabatech was established in 1934, while University of Ibadan was established in 1940. So on this note, we are going to end today's facilitation. It is my hope that we go through the videos, once again and get the best part of it. So till we meet again, I say